If you're in the Austin area, I would like to invite you to my new 4-week series at Crux Climbing Center called Rockin' Yoga. This socially distant, COVID-compliant, beginner-friendly series is part yoga and part top rope climbing. It's a fun and accessible way to use yoga as a tool to prepare for climbing, but also enhance your climbing skills. I work with an awesome climbing instructor who really takes the fear and intimidation out of climbing. Please check out my episode all about Rockin' Yoga, number 16, Yoga and Climbing, if you would like to learn a little bit more about this offering. This weekly series starts February 3rd, 2021, and is limited to 6 spots. If you're interested, go to cruxclimbingcenter.com. I'll also link that info in the show notes. Now, let's enjoy this upcoming episode. Welcome to the Yoga and Podcast. I am your host, Ashley Weber, a yoga and embodiment teacher who is living and learning every day here in the lovely Austin, Texas. And I am super excited to share with you an audio version of my Sensitive Souls series. This is a 4-week course with each week building on the next, and we're now in the final week. If you missed the first 3 weeks, I highly recommend pausing here, going back and listening to the previous 3 episodes and do the homework provided before starting this episode. This series is interactive and designed for the listener to have fun with the suggested journal prompts and optional homework. This week, we'll create a sensitive soul toolbox and end this final episode with a very special meditation I like to do for balance and better sleep. In this particular meditation, we will tap into the masculine and feminine energies of each major chakra center. Lastly, there'll be helpful resources for you to continue your sensitive soul journey moving forward. I invite you to grab a journal and a pen, find a comfortable seat, buckle up, and enjoy the ride that is the final chapter of the Sensitive Soul series. This series is about getting to know ourselves and uncover what it truly means to be a sensitive soul. And as a unique individual, we might require a bit more self-keeping than the average person. You might already know we do not live in a highly sensitive, accommodating world. And at the same time, being highly sensitive, we have a lot of gifts to offer the world. So we have to kind of make our own world work for us. And this series explores ways to self-keep as a highly sensitive / empathic individual. And in doing so, we come to understand ourselves a little bit deeper, hopefully. So let's recap the last 3 episodes before we get into this final episode. Week 1, we learned the strengths and challenges of being highly sensitive and empathic. We also took a quiz to see if we are empathic and where we are on that spectrum. We also learned the differences between being highly sensitive and empathic. Week 2, we discovered ways Ayurveda helps us with our self-keeping practices. There was a dosha quiz to get a sense of our doshic constitution. Roughly, it's a composition of 5 elements within us. Also, briefly touched on how to balance the 5 elements through different Ayurvedic practices, rituals, and yoga. Week 3, last week, was all about boundaries. I shared a few stories from my life on how not having boundaries negatively impacted my life and how that has shifted over time. We learned different ways to set boundaries verbally, physically, energetically. Now, if you haven't listened to the past 3 episodes, I invite you to go back and visit those first before starting episode 4. This week is about setting ourselves up for success, for the future, once this series is complete. We have been getting some knowledge on self-keeping practices, but how do we make it applicable in our lives? We will answer that today. You will need a journal or two pieces of paper and something to write with. Also, there will be a chakra meditation at the end. So make sure you are in a comfortable place, wearing comfortable clothes to receive this practice. Now let's get into this episode. Being highly sensitive slash empathic is similar to being a really rare, exotic orchid flower. Sometimes there's a bit more maintenance and care required for this flower. We want the flower to blossom and thrive, and some days the humidity might be off, the temperature might change. So that orchid requires a lot of maintaining. So as long as we are consistent and listening to its needs, it'll continue to be vibrant and beautiful. So yeah, there's more responsibility, but there's also more reward. And I hope the takeaway from this series is that you are, in fact, recognizing that you are really special and rare. Only about 20% of the population are considered highly sensitive. Even though we are labeled sensitive, something to remember is that because the world we live in isn't so much, we are actually very strong, resilient, and adaptable beings. And I think it's easy to forget that highly sensitive people possess really unique gifts. And most people don't have our gifts. So not everyone is a good listener or can read a room or have empathy for others or hold space. And the list goes on and on. And also, that being said, not everyone is going to understand your uniqueness either. And that is okay. All right. I would like to just take a moment and acknowledge those times when we're misunderstood or people don't get us. And for me personally, this always seems to come up when I'm working on something like Sensitive Soul Series or Yoga Skills for Empaths. Usually, a not highly sensitive, not empathic person will ask me, um, why are you doing this Sensitive Soul Series? Like, why? And I used to, because I'm so passionate about it, I used to just tell them all my thoughts on it. But now what I do is I take a big breath and ask myself, there's a potential that I may not be understood today. How much am I willing to tolerate that? Because what happens usually is when I explain the dark side of being empathic and the issues of being a human sponge, taking on other emotions and pain, often the response I get from the not highly sensitive person is, why would you take on other people's stuff? Just don't do it. And I realize that they have probably a limited amount of information and have no idea the origins of why somebody might be empathic in the first place. And they don't mean it in a mean way, but it's just kind of funny to me because it's like this person has no empathy for the empathic, which is quite ironic. And moments like this happen and remind me of how important it is for other highly sensitive people, other empathic people, to know each other, to have their own community, because we often are in the background, kind of the oddball. And I think when we find each other, we realize how powerful we are and how positive it is. And how, yes, we cannot take on other people's stuff, but we also we have to practice it. We have to create our own tools, create our own rituals around it. We will now do a journaling exercise. It's from Dr. Judith Orloff's book, The Empath's Empowerment Journal. I highly recommend this journal. But for this exercise, you'll need a piece of paper and a pen, and you'll draw a box. So go ahead and draw that box. And then write 5 things that make you different from other people. You will write those 5 things that make you different from other people within the box. And while you're thinking of those things, I'll just insert my 5 things just so you have like an idea, and feel free to use mine if they ring true for you. I'm always thinking about the future. I feel everything. I love being alone to where that makes me definitely different than other people. I love being barefoot, which in Austin, I don't know how unique that is actually, but maybe it's not that unique anymore. I don't drink alcohol because I'm too sensitive to it. And I think that's 5 things. Yeah. All right. So I'll give you 30 more seconds. And once you find those 5 things, you can put your pen down. All right. So now that you wrote those 5 things, you can read them back to yourself. And now you'll pick your pen up and you'll draw a pretty little ribbon on top of that box, because those are your gifts. And so you might even put this little piece of paper with your gifts on your fridge as a reminder that this is what makes you a gifted person. And that's the exercise. All right, we're now getting into exercise 2. So this means we will spend about a minute brainstorming and writing all the self-care rituals and self-keeping tips that we learn throughout this entire series, and then anything else you know that is self-keeping. Now, regardless, if you think you're even going to use this self-keeping practice or not, you'll just list everything, and you can decide later what you want to keep on your list. But it's better to have a lot of options than to have a very narrow selection right off the bat. So we'll go ahead, and before I say go, reminding you that self-keeping can be defined as anything self-preserving, like a practice or a ritual, something that helps restore your well-being or can change your state for the better. Also, something that can help bring more balance back into your life. All right, so go ahead and grab those pens and begin writing. All right, you can now place your pens down. It's been a minute, and look over your list. And hopefully you have at least a few self-keeping tips on that list. And I invite you to circle your top 3 favorite ones. This list you'll keep with you. You can place it in a safe place or on your fridge, somewhere that you have easy access to. So before we go into the depth of the list, I'll actually share with you what I wrote on my list. And if you want to add that parts of my list to your list, feel free to do that. I wrote neti pot, tongue scraping, hand washing, juicing, journaling, walking barefoot outside, yin yoga, meditation, herbal tea, Epsom salt baths, dancing, gardening, cooking, waking up early. Those are a few of mine. And my top 3 that I circle that are my top 3 favorite things to do: neti pot, tongue scraping, and walking outside barefoot. And so this list that you have, regardless if everything you wrote on that piece of paper appeals to you or not, You never know, like different times a day, different season, different months, certain rituals and practices might feel more appealing than others. And so it's just good to have this variety of options. And so the top three would be usually just your default go to when you need to reset, when you need to ground. And then the other ones are there just as inspiration to inspire you to maybe to try out something new, perhaps. And so, a note about this is highly sensitive and empathic people both get overwhelmed by the world and also need to be grounded. Specifically, connecting to nature, connecting to your breath are two great and usually free tools for sensitive souls. Empaths can absorb, as we know, other emotions and pain, and we need to release. We're like human sponges, right? So specifically hand washing, Epsom salt baths, journaling, processing, great ways to process and release. And so if you want to take this list further, and may I recommend you set yourself up for success for the future, is gathering little bits and bots, little tidbits that might help you do the self-keeping practices from your own list. So if the ritual of hand washing for release, maybe you hand wash after work, hand wash after an uncomfortable conversation, maybe have a little bar of soap just as part of your toolbox as a reminder. Or Ambhyanga, the Ayurvedic body oiling we talked about in episode 2, maybe invest in some untoasted sesame oil. Maybe set that on your nightstand. And if body oiling your entire body is just too much to even fathom, just oil the feet and before bed and put on socks. And that is grounding as well. You're nourishing your root that way. And I also want to be clear that the gathering items is not a have to, it's just an extra. Most of the self-keeping and self-preserving is cheap or even free. And so I want to be clear that this can be very accessible if you let it, if you're creative with it. All right, so you may recall the very first episode of this series, there was a list of post-it notes from previous students who've taken the Sensitive Soul series, their burning questions, why they were there for the series. And just so you know, you may not know this about me, but every workshop and series I do this. I'll have the participants write on a post-it why they're there. And at the very end, we'll try to answer their burning questions. And so we'll get into the post-its from our first episode. All right. So the first question, or one of the many questions in these post-it notes, is how do I understand better my empathic side? And where does my empathic side come from? All right, so understanding your empathic side. We're like a human sponge walking around absorbing everything. And so the empathic side is to know this, and to in acknowledging it, then we can do something about it, right? And we went over boundaries. We had a whole episode about boundaries. It was last episode. And then where does it come from, being an empath? It's hard to say. You could say you're born with it, but sometimes you could, for instance, be just highly sensitive, and then maybe something traumatic happens in your life, and then that inclines you to be a bit more empathic. And so it could be from that, or not at all. You could just be born naturally able to be empathic. And then, in my case, it was more like growing up, that was my role in my family to, I was that's just kind of the place in the family. Not to make it about myself, but I can look back now and see like, oh, okay, that was my job was to take on other people's stuff, and so it's very subconscious. I think that's what maybe people who aren't highly sensitive or empathic don't understand is it is a bit you have to remember. I think you have to remember that you're empathic. All right, we'll move on to the next post-it. How do I learn to control my feelings more as an empath? Okay, I would say a lot of timeouts, a lot of breaks from life, if and when you can. For instance, and I know as I'm recording this, we're during a pandemic, so nobody's really partying right now. But when you go outside, back when we could be in larger groups, it could be a festival, it could be a farmer's market. I don't see a farmer's market as rowdy, but anything that's overstimulating, you could find a little quiet moment by yourself. That could be in your car, that could be in the bathroom, that could be just kind of walking away, stepping outside for a moment and just taking a few deep breaths, and understanding that that might be what you need to do every time you're in one of those kind of frenetic situations. And control feelings. How do I learn how to control my feelings more? Therapy, great option. There's sliding scale available, so it's a little more accessible than it used to be. Yoga is a great way, especially a slower, quieter, maybe a yin yoga, to process your feelings. Although you might need something rigorous, quicker to process whatever feelings you have. I just think of spinal twist, lying on your back, doing a spinal twist to just release whatever might be held in your belly. That's where I hold a lot of emotional stuff. Okay, moving on. How do I teach without spilling into my students? Okay, so I don't know what they're teaching. I don't know if it's children. I don't know if it's adults. I don't know if it's yoga or education or what kind of thing. I think this just goes back to boundaries and spilling into. That's an interesting phrasing. I just wouldn't make it about me at all. I think I would stay very clear. I would not overshare. I'd be very almost, I guess, mysterious as a teacher, just so people feel safe. You want your students to feel safe. And then I guess that's all I have to say about that. I assume spilling into means sharing more of yourself than appropriate. Maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but we'll leave that one there. All right. This one's good. How do you suggest protecting yourself from carrying the heavy hurt and pain from others while holding space for them? This is like a classic empath problem, I think. As you have a friend that's in distress, they need comforting. You're there for them. You have plenty of empathy for them, but then you go home and you feel like crap for the rest of the day, week, month from that interaction. And so it goes back to boundaries, but it also goes back to if it's available to you, if you know in advance, if you know you're going to meet this person who's in pain in advance, then at least you have time to prepare yourself before. And then even after that interaction, and then there's certain things you can do during that I've found that have worked. This is all my personal opinion also. And so before you meet this person in distress, you can sit in your car and just do a quick meditation. And very simple meditation. Close your eyes, with your car parked, And, start to take some deep breaths, clear your mind a bit. Imagine there's a tight fist in your skull, and then you just let that palm open. And then visualize the tiniest little pink light, or it could be, pure white light, about an inch away from your entire body, and you're completely shielded. This is like a shielding method. You're shielded by that pure light. And then make sure you're breathing, and that you continue to breathe while being with this person in distress. And so, if you're anything like me, I typically will hold my breath when I'm uncomfortable, and I'll quit feeling my body. I won't feel the ground. I won't feel the chair I'm sitting on. I'll just kind of move a little bit away from my body. And so you want to be mindful of that if that's your tendency, and do the opposite. And so if you're standing, unlock your knees, feel the feet against the ground, maybe weight shift from right to left. If you're seated, plant your feet firmly on the ground, release your sitting bones into the chair, maintain your breath. You're basically doing yoga while you're you're aware of your body while breathing when you're with this person. And what's great is that keeps you there, that keeps you in your body. You can still be with the person in distress, but you're not giving yourself away, losing yourself, no longer feeling yourself, feeling your breath. You're present with yourself too. And I've found there's even like a co-regulation with the nervous system. So if the person is like not breathing, and they're irate, or they're sad, or they're just out of it, and you maintain that breath, not in a like annoying way, but in a very like quiet, calm, regulating your own nervous system way, that can kind of influence their nervous system. We're not trying to change them. We're not trying to fix them, but we become the anchor. We become the grounding force. And it actually takes a lot of strength to be a grounding force around other people. And then limit, like, you might have to just be honest with yourself. Maybe 20 minutes is all you can do being in a situation. And then, you look at your clock, and 20 minutes go by, and you very gracefully exit. And then after the interaction, I think it's a good idea to do some sort of ritual to release that distress. So that could mean bathing, showering, running, walking, yoga. There's certain types of yoga that you kind of fling, you kind of shake your arms. You could also just shake your body. That releases that flight or fight feeling in the body. Very primitive. To shake. Dance, dance if you want to be a little more artful about shaking, I guess. And then hand washing after that, and maybe journaling. I mean, you could do all those things, or you could do one of those things. But hopefully this helps. We will now begin with my favorite chakra meditation right before bed. I love to do this one, and it's actually really simple, but we'll break it down. So find a comfortable reclined position. That could be lying on your bed, that could be lying on the ground. Make sure that you're comfortable, and that might mean putting a blanket over your body for warmth. That might mean a pillow behind your head. You might loosen your clothing, perhaps. We'll begin with 3 deep breaths. Take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, let it go. We'll do that twice more. Inhale. And exhale, empty. One more time. Inhale. And exhale. So notice your spine against the bed or against the earth. Can you allow your spine to become a little bit heavier than it already is. So yielding your weight into gravity just a little bit more. Observe the right side of your spine, all along the right side. And notice the left side of your spine, all along the left. And then notice both sides of your spine. And then carry your awareness all the way down to the tip of your tailbone. And as you draw your attention there, can you observe a ball of red light? It's a three-dimensional bubble of glowing red light, a deep, true red color residing there. And as you inhale, imagine your breath could influence this ball of light, and your inhale expands the ball of light from your tailbone all the way outward. And as you exhale, the ball of light travels back into its home base right at your tailbone. Continue in observation. Inhale, red ball of light expands. And as you exhale, red ball of light contracts. As you watch this ball of red light expand and contract, notice if there's any wobbly spots. Maybe one side of the bubble is a little bigger than the other half. And as you breathe in and out into this ball of life, is it possible to even the ball of light? If maybe it's pulled to the right or left, can we bring it back into alignment just with our breath, just with our focus? We'll take one more breath. Inhale, red ball of light. And exhale, red ball of light. Next, we'll move up the spine to the plate at the back of the hips, the sacrum. In the center of that sacrum lies an orange ball of light. And as we focus on that spot at the sacrum, notice how the breath influences the ball of light. The inhale expands the orange ball of light inside the body. Watch it grow. And as you exhale, allow the orange ball of light to coil back into the center of the sacrum. We'll continue to watch that. Inhale, orange ball of light expands. And exhale, orange ball of light contracts. Inhale, orange. And exhale, orange. If ever you notice this bubble of orange becoming uneven or maybe even oval shaped, can you simply encourage it to find a little more centeredness, a little more roundedness? With each breath. Take one more inhale. Inhale, orange. And exhale, orange. We'll move up the spine to the stomach. So in the internal organ of the stomach, and as you rest your mind at the center of your stomach, can you notice there's a yellow ball of light there? And as you inhale, let the ball of light expand inside you. And as you exhale, feel beautiful yellow ball of light contracting back to the center of your stomach. Inhale, yellow ball expands. And exhale, yellow ball contracts. Inhale, yellow. Exhale, yellow. And as you breathe, notice if there are parts of this center that move more to the right or more to the left. And without judgment, can you just simply nurture a little more of a alignment or a centeredness with each inhale, each exhale, encouraging a bit of balance in this center. Take one more breath. Inhale, yellow. And exhale, yellow. Moving up the body to the center of the chest. Noticing a green ball of light there. And as you rest your awareness on the green ball of light, the green gets more vibrant, more radiant. As you breathe in, let the ball of light expand inside your chest, down your arms, out into your hands. As you exhale, feel the green light contract back into the heart center. Inhale, green ball of light expands outward in the body. Exhale, green light contracts inward to the center. Continue to observe and notice if there's a pull to one side more than the other. See if you can bring that pull back into a bit more balance or symmetry. Inhale, green, and exhale, green. Moving up the body to the throat center. Inside the throat, notice a pure blue ball of light. And as you inhale, allow the ball of light to fill up the throat and the back of the nasal cavity, the ears. And as you exhale, the blue ball of light returns back to the center of the throat. Inhale, blue ball of light expands. And exhale, blue ball of light contracts. Inhale, blue ball of light. And exhale, blue ball of light. Notice if one ear is more pronounced than the other in receiving this blue energy. And see if you can find a bit more alignment with each breath. Inhale, blue. And exhale, blue. Moving up the body to the space between the eyebrows, about an inch up inside the skull, to the point of intuition, the third eye center. Notice a deep indigo light there. And as you inhale, let the indigo fill up the skull, the brain. And exhale, indigo light contracts back to the third eye. Inhale, indigo light expands and illuminates the skull. Exhale, indigo light returns back to its home. Inhale, indigo. And exhale, indigo. Now moving to the top of the head about an inch away, notice a violet crown above your head. And as you inhale, watch the rays of violet light shoot out to the ethers. And as you exhale, feel that violet rain back in, resting just above your skull. Continue to watch the inhale, the expansion of that violet light outward. And exhale, violet light moves back to the top of your head. And as you rest here, draw your awareness to your spine once more. Observe the right side of your spine. Notice the left side of your spine. And notice both sides of your spine. And before you reemerge and go throughout your day, give yourself a thank you for pausing for yourself and going inward. Going inward to find a little more balance, a little more stability. I will now share with you a quote one of my students shared with the whole group in my previous Sensitive Soul series. The quote is by Sarah Faith Gottsdiner. I call my energy back to me. All my energy that is scattered other places, I call back to me. All the energy in my body that is not of me, I return to the earth to be transformed into something greater. I lovingly release all energy that no longer serves me. All the energy inside of my body, all the intentions I set forth is of me, for me. I hope you enjoyed today's final episode in this 4-part series and that you gained some insights on the subject of being a sensitive soul. My intention is that the takeaway from this series is that being a highly sensitive person or an empathic person, it's a very special and sacred thing. So let's keep it that way and practice our self-keeping for the long run. That being said, I hope that your sensitive soul toolbox inspires this in the future. Some additional resources I have for you is book recommendations. Anything written by Dr. Judith Orloff. She wrote Thriving as an Empath, The Empath Survival Guide, and the Empath Empowerment Journal is a really nice tool to use. And the podcast I recommend is Enlightened Empaths. They get into more of the spiritual side of this. They speak to more of the psychic and intuitive side of things. And of course, the Simple Ayurveda podcast. Also, if you would like to continue your journey with me and be part of a supportive community virtually, I have a monthly meetup called the Sensitive Soul Secret Club. It's a club that's about self-care and self-keeping through the ancient practices of yoga and Ayurveda. It's a monthly check-in to stay focused on taking care of ourselves. If you would like to check out more information or even join the club, you can go to my Patreon at patreon.com/yoga and podcast. You can also find that same link in the show notes. If you would like to help the podcast, please leave us a glowing 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you would like us to keep going, hit that subscribe button. If you want to email us, you can connect with us at yogaandpodcast@gmail.com. The and is spelled out, YOGAAND, podcast@gmail. Please follow us on Instagram at Yoga and Podcast and let us know if you have any specific topics you would like us to cover on future episodes. If you would like to apply to be a guest on the show, please check out my website at ashleyweberyoga.com/podcast. There's a form that you can fill out and submit. The theme music is by Ali Holder. Sound engineering and mixing by Bentley the Cat. Guest booking and media by Chloe the Kitten. Remember that this podcast is for everyone. If you're a human living on planet Earth, you might benefit from listening to Yoga and Podcast. See you next week.